I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, and welcome to KRAD COVID readings, which is finally back after a Hurricane Isaias-imposed hiatus. On Tuesday, the 4th of August, Hurricane Isaias passed through New York City, and one of the effects it had was to knock out power in our house and a lot of our neighborhood. It stayed that way for 55 hours, so it kind of threw everything into chaos, and rather than do readings or, in fact, do much of anything, I was spending most of the time, along with my wife, running in circles, screaming and shouting, and trying to make sure the stuff in our refrigerator didn't go bad. And going out to our car a lot and using its air conditioning and its ability to charge our phones. So anyway, power's back, everything's fine, and it's back to as normal as things ever get around here, and so now we're back with KRAD COVID readings. One of the things I wanted to do in honor of reaching the 50th episode, having already read my first ever short story, which I did for episode 50, for the next two I wanted to read the first stories I wrote in the milieus of Dragon Precinct and the Tales of Cassie Zukov, Weirdness Magnet. I'm going to start with my very first Precinct story, which I actually wrote after I wrote Dragon Precinct, but which came out at the same time as Dragon Precinct in 2004. They both came out the same month. There was the novel Dragon Precinct, and then there was this short story, which was reprinted in Tales from Dragon Precinct, but originally appeared in an anthology called Murder by Magic, which was edited by Rosemary Edghill, and the theme is obviously perfect for Dragon Precinct. So this story is called Getting the Chair. What have we... Oh, Lord and Lady, what is that smell? Lieutenant Danthres Tresillian of the Cliff's End Castle Guard stopped short in the doorway of the cottage. Behind her, Lieutenant Torin Van Wiveled, her partner, had to do likewise to keep from being impaled on the standard-issue longsword scabbard that hung from her belt. He found himself staring at the brown cloak with the griffin crest of Lord Alban and Lady Mirka that Danthres, and Torin, and all the lieutenants in the guard, wore. Torin was about to ask what she was on about when he, too, noticed the smell. Danthres was half-elf, so her senses were more acute. Torin could only imagine how much worse the stench was for her. It was pretty wretched for him. He detected at least four different odors competing to make his nose wrinkle, and only one matched the expected stench of decaying flesh. The guard who had summoned the two lieutenants was a young man named Garrus. Like most of the guards assigned to Unicorn Precinct, which covered the more well-to-do regions of Cliff's End, Garrus was eager to please and not very bright. That's the body, ma'am. Guard, I've been around dead bodies most of my adult life. They don't usually smell like rotted cheese. No, ma'am, the guard said. A brief silence ensued. Danthres sighed loudly. So what is the smell? Probably the rotted cheese, ma'am. It's on the table. Or it could be the other food items we found. Who found the body? She asked, still standing in the doorway, blocking Torin. Since she was half a head taller than him and had a wide mane of blonde hair, he had no view of the interior. Under other circumstances, he might have complained. Instead, he was happy to enjoy the less unpleasant aroma of the street a while longer. At least this murder wasn't in Dragon Precinct, or worse, Goblin Precinct, where a rotting corpse constituted a step up in the local odors. Next door neighbor, ma'am, Garrus said. The smell got to her. No surprise there. And when he didn't answer the door, she summoned the guard. I came, broke the door in, found the body. He's the only one here, and there's only one bedroom upstairs, so he probably lived here alone. You didn't ask the neighbor that? No, ma'am. I thought that you would do all your work for you, naturally. Did you at least have the wherewithal to summon the ME? Yes, ma'am. The magical examiner sent to Magebird saying he'd be here within half an hour, and that was about a quarter of an hour ago. Danthres finally moved into the house, enabling Torin to do likewise. He surveyed the sitting room, which seemed to take up most of the ground floor. To his left, a staircase led, presumably, to the second level. To his right was a wall taken up almost entirely with shelves, stuffed to bursting with books, scrolls, papers, and other items, interrupted only by two windows. The wall opposite where he stood was the same, those shelves broken only by a doorway. Directly in front of Torin was a couch, festooned with papers, dust, writing implements, and wax residue from candles. Perpendicular to it on either side were two easy chairs, one in a similar state of disarray as the couch, the other relatively clean. A table sat in front of the sofa, covered with a lantern, papers, books, scrolls, candles, bowls, and foodstuffs, including the cheese responsible for keeping Torin's nostril hairs flaring. Lying face down on the floor was the body of an elderly man, already decomposing, which meant he'd been dead at least a day. The corpse wore a simple, but not cheap, linen shirt and trousers. Most importantly, the man's head was at the wrong angle relative to the rest of his body. The question now, Danthres said, is whether he broke his neck or if someone broke it for him. I'd say the latter. Torin pointed at the body. Look at how neatly he's arranged, almost perfectly parallel to the couch, with his arms at his sides. He was set there by someone. Danthres nodded in agreement, then looked around. Probably too much to hope for that it was a robbery. Not that we'd be able to tell if something was missing in this disaster. She turned to look at Garrus, folding her arms across the griffin crest, a match for the one on her cloak, on the chest of her standard-issue black leather armor. Why haven't you opened a window? Garrus seemed to be trying to shrink into his own armor, which was a match for Danthres and Torin's, save that he wore no cloak, and the crest on his chest was that of a unicorn, denoting the precinct to which he was assigned. I didn't want to disturb the scene. I remember that robbery in Old Town last winter, and I tried to close a window, and, well, ma'am may not remember, but ma'am tried to cut my head off for interfering with possible evidence before she had a chance to examine it. Danthres snorted. That's ridiculous. I never would have tried to cut your head off. There'd be an inquiry. Torin grinned beneath his thick red beard. I think it will be safe for you to open it, guard. If you say so, sir. Garrus walked to the window and found that it wouldn't budge. Honestly, they've got to raise the standards during those recruitment drives, Danthres said scornfully. Her not very attractive face looked positively deathly when she was angry, and Garrus tried to shrink even further into his armor. Danthres' features were rather unfortunate combinations of her dual heritage. The point of her ears, the elegant high forehead, and the thin lips from her elven father were often total mismatches with the wide nose, large brown eyes, and shallow cheekbones she inherited from her human mother. I'm sure, Torin said before Danthres truly lost her temper, that it's just stuck. He walked over and saw that there was no locking mechanism. That in itself was odd. True, this was Unicorn Precinct. People didn't need to virtually seal themselves into their homes for safety around here, but an unlocked ground floor window was still unusual, especially if this old man did indeed live alone. Torin braced himself against the window and heaved upward. It still wouldn't budge. It won't work, you know. Whirling, Torin looked for the speaker, his right hand automatically moving to the griffin head hilt of his longsword. The only people in the room were Garrus, Danthres, and himself, and the corpse, of course, though he was unlikely to speak. Who said that? Danthres asked. Her left hand was also at her sword's hilt. I did. Torin realized that the voice came from the area of the couch. Come out from behind there! Torin walked around to behind the sofa. Sir, there's nobody there, Garrus said. I checked. Torin saw that Garrus was right. It's the couch, Danthres said. The couch talks. Bravo to the woman, the couch said. Hell and damnation, Torin said. Our corpse is a wizard. And bravo to the man, the couch added. Yes, my dear departed owner was a mage. His specialty, as you might have already deduced, is animating furniture. He also hated the very concept of fresh air, so he magicked the windows shut. Another voice said, You'd think just once he'd take pity on us, but no. This, Torin realized, was the lantern. Then the cleaner of the two chairs made a noise. All you ever do is complain. Ephrac gave you life, and now he's dead. You spit on his grave. Danthres turned to Garrus. I don't suppose the Emmy's Magebird is still here. No, ma'am, it discorporated as soon as it gave the message. Another noise from the chair. It really is a shame about poor Ephrac. It's not that much of a shame, Couch said. I mean, really, what did he do for us? Well, he did give us life, the lantern said. I don't think that's enough, Danthres bellowed, interrupting the furniture. Torin added, I'm afraid we're going to have to question each of you individually. What's the point? Danthres asked him. He's a wizard. The Brotherhood will claim jurisdiction, perform their own investigation, and keep us completely out of it, like they always do whenever one of their own is involved. And honestly, they're welcome to it. I hate magic. Don't be so sure of that, said another voice, this time from the doorway. Torin recognized this one, Benin, the magical examiner. The short, squat old man was on loan from the Brotherhood of Wizards to provide magical assistance to the law enforcement efforts of the Cliff's End Castle Guard. Good afternoon, Benin, Torin said with a grin. What's so damn good about it? I was having a perfectly fine nap and one of those blasted children woke me up with another damned thing for you lot. Several young children, troublemakers mostly, orphans that had been arrested and pressed into service in lieu of incarceration in the workhouses, served as messengers and or informants for the Castle Guard. Most of the guard called them the Youth Squad, except for Benin, who usually had less flattering terms. Garrus had no doubt sent one such to fetch Benin.
And what in the name of Lord Albin is that horrendous smell?
A combination of various slovenly habits, Torin said. Not surprising, Benin said as he entered. Ephrac makes the gutter rats in the docklands look positively pristine by comparison. You know him? Danthres asked. Benin nodded. A tiresome little old man who dabbles in useless magic for the most part. He's not actually a member of the Brotherhood. Torin blinked in surprise. Didn't think that sort of thing was permitted. Well, with new wizards, it isn't. Benin reached into the bag he always carried over his shoulder. But Ephrax's a couple of centuries old. He predates the Brotherhood, and they let him be as long as he registered with them and stayed out of mischief. He pulled the components for his spell out, chuckling bitterly. That certainly won't be an issue anymore. Torin led Garrus toward the back doorway, which presumably led to the kitchen. Come on, let's give him some room. The primary duty of the magical examiner at a crime scene was to cast a peelback spell. It read the psychic resonances on inanimate objects and showed him what happened in the recent past. This generally meant he was able to see what happened, how it happened, and most importantly, who did it. Danthres followed him into the kitchen, which smelled worse than the living room. The place was an even bigger mess, with several part-full mugs of various liquids, or congealed messes that were liquid once, plates of partly eaten food, and still more papers and books, freely distributed about the table, chairs, countertop, and cupboard. The cupboard itself was the source of the worst stench. Torin recognized the sigil on the cupboard door as that of a freezing spell, but he also knew that it had to be renewed every few days, something Ephrac was no longer in a position to do.
Why would anyone want to have animate furniture?
Danthres asked. Torin shrugged. Gave him someone to talk to? If he lived alone, shunned even by other wizards, he probably didn't have much by way of social interaction. We should talk to his neighbors, starting, she said with a look at Garrus, with the one who called you. Take us to her. The peelback generally took half an hour or so, which left the lieutenants with the task of questioning potential witnesses. That pool was fairly shallow. The neighbor who summoned the guard referred to Ephrac as a stupid old man who talks to himself. His other neighbor said that he had very few visitors, usually people seeking out potions or other small magics that they didn't want the Brotherhood to know about. You know how those young folk are. They think if they don't tell no one will find out, he said with a wink. That neighbor hadn't seen anyone go in recently, though. The house was across the street from a park Lord Albin and Lady Mirka had built a year before as a children's playground. No one there was particularly helpful. The parents were too busy watching their children, the children were too busy playing, and since they'd only all been there a few hours at most, it was unlikely that they saw anything useful to the investigation of a day-old murder. Garrus, meanwhile, tracked down two of the youth squad and told them to fetch a cadre of guards. In addition to removing the body, they'd need to take the furniture in for questioning. Benin came out of the house after a half an hour, looking even more sour than usual. Bad news, I'm afraid. The peelback was inconclusive. Danthres' eyes flared. An inconclusive peelback was a rare thing indeed.
Why?
She asked sharply.
That damned furniture, that's why.
Torin closed his eyes and exhaled. Let me guess, they don't count as inanimate objects. No, Benin said. The peelback only worked on unliving items. The living interfered with the spell's ability to work, a term which didn't apply to Ephrax's corpse, of course, nor would it to, say, a zombie, but apparently did to magically animated furniture. We have to remove the furniture anyhow, Danthres said. Maybe after that. Benin shook his head. Won't work. Something about the way that old ass performed the spell interferes with the peelback. I can tell you two things, though. One is that it's just the lantern, the one chair, and the couch. All the other objects in that house are properly inanimate. And the other? Ephrac died about a day ago, and there was someone else in the house yesterday. But I can't tell you if it was before, during, or after the murder. Benin smiled, a most unpleasant expression that didn't remotely suit him. Actually, it's good news for you two, isn't it? It means you have an actual mystery on your hands. Wonderful, Danthres muttered. Oh, I thought you detective types loved a good mystery. Benin was still smiling. Actually, we hate them, Torin said, with great passion and vehemence. They're irritating, they involve a good deal of effort, and they tend to be exceedingly messy. Danthres nodded in agreement. I prefer my crimes simple and my criminals stupid and easily found. 3 guards, each wearing armor with the Unicorn Precinct crest, walked up to the house. One of them said, Afternoon, lieutenants. Here we're, movers now. Nodding, Torin said, Yes, we've got a body, 2 large pieces of furniture, and a lantern to bring to main headquarters. They're witnesses. Bodies a witness? No, Torin said with a grin. Just the other 3. telling you I didn't see anything. Danthres growled.
How could you not have seen anything? You're a lantern.
I only can see things when I'm lit. Ephrac was in one of his moods. He was only using candles. Danthres sat at the table in one of the interrogation rooms of the Castle Guard headquarters. The headquarters were housed in the east wing of Lord Albin and Lady Mirka's castle, which in turn was located right at the end point of the Forest of Nimvale, the architectural centerpiece of Cliff's End. 4 of the wing's interior rooms were lit only by a single lantern used primarily for questioning people. Torin and Danthres had found that suspects and witnesses tended to get nervous, and therefore chatty, in rooms that had little light and many shadows. She had to admit, however, that having 2 such lanterns, the one hanging from the wall and the one sitting on the room's only table, diluted the effect considerably. Moods? Danthres prompted after the lantern remained silent for several seconds. Oh, he'd just get into one of these things where he'd be experimenting with some magic thing or other. It was always just a phase. He didn't have any discipline, really. He'd always start something, throw himself completely into it for a while, then abandon it unfinished. But every time he did, all of a sudden it was just candles, candles, candles. I'd sit for days without being lit, weeks even. It was just awful. I mean, can you imagine having to sit blind all the time? Danthres didn't answer. Her first rule of interrogation was that she asked all the questions. What happened the night he died? I told you I didn't see anything. Yes, but I assume you can still hear when you're not lit, right? Well, strictly speaking, yes, but... So what did you hear? A pause. Well, you see, I wasn't really paying close attention. You were sulking because he was ignoring you, Danthres said. I don't sulk! She pressed on. You didn't like the way he was treating you, so you decided to ignore him. He was treating you like a child, so you were going to act like one. I'd hardly go that far. But, well, it isn't fair. I mean, if he was going to make my sight dependent on being lit, the absolute least he could do was light me regularly. But no, he couldn't be bothered. He just had to study by candlelight. It keeps me pure, he used to say. Honestly, such pretentious garbage. Danthres got up from her chair and paced around the table, her brown cloak billowing a bit behind her as she did so. So what happened the day he was killed? You must have heard something. You were right there. Oh, just another one of those idiots that always comes in. Even if I had been lit, I probably would have ignored him. They just want to use Ephrac, you know, try to get around the Brotherhood. Like that ever works. Honestly, it's just so... Did you recognize the voice? Not really, but you people all sound alike to me. People or humans? Another pause. Oh, you're right. It wasn't a dwarf or an elf, and he spoke common, so it wasn't a goblin or anything like that. Besides, I've been able to tell by the smell, even in that pigsty. No, it was definitely a human. I saw the whole thing, officer. Torin smiled as he entered the interrogation room. The guards had placed the couch up against the wall and removed the papers and books, though it was still thoroughly stained and dirt-encrusted. At least Torin assumed that whatever encrusted it was dirt. He decided not to inspect it too closely, instead turning the seat at the table toward the couch and addressing it. I'm a lieutenant, actually. Look, I saw everything, Sergeant. It was a human, male, young, black hair, blue eyes. Maybe it was brown hair. But either way, it was tied back in a ponytail, and it was definitely dark red hair. And greenish blue eyes. But anyhow, he came in and started bothering poor Ephrac. He wanted a charm for this girl he was attracted to. Ephrac said he wasn't licensed for that kind of thing, and the boy went insane. He punched Ephrac right in the face, then broke his neck. He seemed a little surprised after that, actually. Got all angry and started yelling at Ephrac. At least that's what it sounded like. Torin frowned. Sounded like? Well, it's hard to get a good look. Ephrac tended to leave stuff lying around, and that makes it hard to see exactly. Good sir, if you could tell me what color my beard is, I'd be grateful. Well, it's red, of course. If I could see fine now. It's just, Ephrac had that stuff all over me. You don't have any idea what the murderer's hair color is, do you? Or what length it was? Well, not as such, no, but I did hear everything that happened. I can tell you this, too, Captain. He didn't leave right away. I don't think he took anything, just threw some papers around. Did you try to stop him? No, I think the chair might have, though. I heard them talking, but I couldn't make anything out. My hearing isn't always great when I'm all covered either, to be honest. But I definitely heard that blonde-haired boy break Ephrax's neck. Probably. It was an accident. Really? Danthres said, gazing upon the chair with annoyance. Total accident. Ephrac tripped right after that boy who wanted the love potion left. Poor kid, he just wanted to impress a girl, you know? Why do boys do that anyhow? Try to impress girls? Describe the boy. He was average height, straight brown hair, blue eyes, no beard, but he was obviously trying to grow one. And what happened when he was there? Not much. He came in, asked Efrak for a love potion. Efrak explained about how those things have to go through the Brotherhood, and he wasn't licensed. The boy whined the way boys do, and then he left, talking about how unfair life is and how he'd never get the girl of his dreams. Kind of tragic, really. Poor boy. After several seconds, Danthres prompted,
Then what?
"Oh, Efrak just tripped on the table and broke his full neck. At least I assume that's what broke. His head hit the table, and then he didn't get up. Silly old man. He was always tripping over things."
I hate magic. I really, really hate magic.
Torin smiled at Danthres' words as he entered Captain Osric's office. His partner was already seated in one of the captain's guest chairs, and had made that comment to the head of the castle guard. Osric sat behind his desk, his perpetually half-shaven face in its permanent scowl, made all the more doleful by a silk eye patch over his left eye. He too had a cloak and leather armor, both emblazoned with a griffin crest. However, his cloak was red, and presently hanging on a hook on the wall. Danthres continued ranting as Torin took the other guest chair.
It's ridiculous. How am I supposed to interrogate someone who doesn't blink, doesn't shrug, doesn't slouch, doesn't smile, doesn't...
I get the idea, Tresillian, Osric said. He turned his right eye onto Torin. "What did Benin say, Ban Wibbled?" "To stop bothering him when he's trying to have a nap," Torin grinned. "However, I got him to admit that there's no way to tell if Efrak died by accident. The neck break and the bruising on the side of Efrak's head are both consistent with Efrak falling into the table, but how he fell is impossible to say." "From the sound of it," Osric said, "the only reliable witness is the chair." "Well, he's the only one who saw everything," Danthres said, "but I'm sure he's lying." Osric's right eye bored into Danthres. "Why would a chair lie?"
I don't know, but he's lying. Efrak was murdered.
"I agree with Danthres." Osric snorted. "As if that's going to convince me. You two always agree with each other when you're sitting in this office, because you don't want me to think you two ever argue."
It's absurd.
Danthres said archly. "Torin and I never argue." "Yes, we do, actually," Torin admitted.
No, we don't.
"In any case, she's still right. Efrak was murdered. Bodies don't, as a rule, fall down with their arms at their side parallel to the furniture. Someone set him down." "Probably our lovesick boy. I want to put his description out to the guard." "What description?" Torin asked. "The chair's the only one who described him." "True," Danthres said, "but it's the only one of the three who got a good look." Leaning back in his chair, Osric said, "That still doesn't answer the question of why a chair would lie. What's the motive?" Danthres shrugged, causing her blonde hair to bounce. "Either way, the chair's description is the only one we've got. It's what we have to start with." "It could take days to find him." Again, Danthres shrugged. "So it takes days." The captain pulled out his dagger, grabbed the battered sharpening stone on his desk, and started running the blade up and down it. Torin scowled under his beard. Osric only started sharpening his dagger when he had bad news to impart. "The Brotherhood's letting us handle this, assuming we handle it quickly and properly. Translated into common, that means that we need this case closed by sunup, or they'll step in." "Fine by me," Danthres said. "Let them have it." "No." Osric leaned forward again and pointed at Danthres with the tip of the dagger. "It's bad enough that they crawl all over our damn cases from the start when their registered mages are involved. I'm damned if I'll let them step on us because we're not solving the case fast enough to suit them. I want this case closed by sunup. Is that clear, Tresillian?"
Yes, sir.
"What about you, Ben Wibbled?" "Oh, quite clear, sir," Torin said quickly. "See if you can get a better description out of one of the other two if you're so sure the chair is not being truthful." Danthres shook her head. "They couldn't see anything. They were all covered in clutter. The chair's the only one who got any kind of good look." "That's it!" Torin said. "What's it?" Grinning said, "The chair's motive for lying." "Did you find that poor boy yet?" "We're still looking," Torin said, as he and Danthres re-entered the interrogation room where the chair sat. "We were wondering if you could answer a few more questions." "Of course. I am happy to do whatever I can to aid you good people." "That's very considerate," Danthres said. "Indeed," Torin nodded. "You've been much more helpful than their compatriots, in fact." "Well, that's hardly surprising," the chair said. "They're just a couple of tiresome, filthy little worms."
I'm glad you said that, Danthres said. They're filthy, I mean. We noticed that you were less stained than the other furnishings.
"Any of them," Torin said. "Ability to talk, notwithstanding." "Oh, well, that's hardly surprising," the chair said quickly. "After all, I was Efrak's favorite chair. He always treated me better than the others."
Funny, the others never mentioned that.
"Well, they're just jealous is all." Danthres looked at Torin. "I can certainly understand that." "Of course," Torin said with a nod. "After all, if I were a piece of furniture in that house, and some other piece of furniture was singled out for such treatment, I'd be jealous also. But if the chair was his favorite..."
other two gave no indication of this exalted status. In fact, they were also surprised when we told them how clean you were. On those last two words, Danthres turned to the chair. In fact, the couch opined that was why your poor, lovesick boy stuck around after Ephrak's death, and why you two were talking.
That's ridiculous, the chair stammered. I would never lie like that.
Unless you had good reason, Torin said. Or a shallow one, Danthres added, like a promise to clean you up in exchange for lying to us about how Ephrak died.
Shallow?
The chair now sounded indignant.
You think it's shallow to ask for once, just once, to be treated with respect? To actually scrape off the food that dates back to the reign of Chalmrake the Foul? To not leave 8 pounds of books on top of my cushions? To maybe sit on me once in a while instead of treating me no different than the table? I'm a chair. My function is to be sat on, not used as a receptacle for some stupid old man's garbage.
So the boy did kill him, Torin asked.
It wasn't accident, but yes. They got into a shoving match. Ephrak fell down and broke his fool neck. And you know what? I'm glad that old fool's dead. The man had no respect for us, none. And it wasn't just me, you know, but those other two were just so grateful to be animated they let him walk all over them. How he treated the poor lantern. A disgrace, an absolute disgrace, keeping a lantern in the dark like that.
We're going to need a full description of the boy, Torin said after a moment. Then I'm afraid we'll have to turn you over to the Brotherhood of Wizards. At that, Danthres turned to Torin. What for? Why not just put him in a cell here? He did cover up a crime.
Yes, the chair said in a panic. Why not in a cell here? The Brotherhood will probably deanimate me or something. I don't want to die.
Besides, the Brotherhood gave us jurisdiction, Danthres said. So it's up to our magistrate to decide what to do with him, not them.
I'll be a model prisoner, the chair put in. In fact, it'll be heavenly. People will actually use me to sit on for once.
Torin shook his head and smiled. Fine, we won't turn him over.
Oh, the chair said. And the boy's name is Brent. He lives a few blocks from Ephrak's house. He came by a few times, actually, and always talked to me. Very nice boy. Short, blonde hair and a ponytail, brown eyes, and a thick, full beard.
Torin gazed at the chair, then turned to Danthres. So much for our accurate description. I'll have Garrus pick him up, Danthres said. Then she sighed deeply. I really hate magic. That story is in Murder by Magic, as I said. It's also in Tales from Dragon Precinct. Tales from Dragon Precinct has other stories, many of which I've already read in this reading series, and I'll get to all of them eventually. Check me out online at DeCandido.net. Check my blog out at DeCandido.wordpress.com. Please support my Patreon at patreon.com/KRAD. And stay tuned for more this week. I should be back on the Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, assuming no more hurricanes blow through town. Thank you very much, and take care, and please be safe.